Hi, everyone, and welcome to True Crime Tuesdays on the Ghoul Friend Hour. I'm your host. Oh my God.
It's all right.
I'm,
It's all right.
I'm your host, Rachel Faust, and let's get weird.
Let's get weird.
That's the first time I've ever messed it up. Oh my God.
It was bound to happen. You should have seen like Taylor. She did like 20 takes. She
Oh
and
my
I like we said
God.
she was that little old man that was trying to say buttery flaky
Buttery,
crust.
flaky crust.
She kept like messing it up. I'm like, Taylor, all you have to say is like, "Hi, I'm your host, Taylor." Oh my God, I almost said Taylor Faust. Hi, I'm your host, Taylor Jones. Welcome to the Girlfriend Hour. Like I was like just really simple. And she's like, "Hi, I'm Jones Taylor." And I was like, "Taylor."
Oh my gosh.
It happens.
Man, you
It
can't win them
happens.
all. It's fine.
No, no. So yeah, so we in the true spirit and fashion of October, it's gonna get spooky on the Ghoul Friend Hour, especially on True Crime Tuesdays with Rachel. So, Rachel, why don't you tell them what we're getting into today?
All right. So, spooky edition here. We are going to talk about scary movies that are related to real life crime. So you might not know that some of your favorite movies are connected in that way. And one of the ones that I had picked that I am absolutely petrified of, that like I watched it and was like, nope, can't do this. I had no idea it was related to something for real. So excited to share about that one.
Yes,
Oh
yes.
gosh.
Honestly, I mean, as we all know, anything in life, whether it's a holiday, it's a story, it's something comes from somewhere. So I don't truly think anything is pure figment of imagination. Maybe
It's
sometimes,
inspired by
but there's
something.
inspiration behind it. Yeah. So like most of the folklore, the stories, the tales and stuff that you hear, it is all based off of something true. So that's kind of the premise of today's episode is we are going to really really give you some spine I almost said jinglers. Whoops. Spine tinglers.
I like
Um
it.
yeah,
Some
spine
spine
jinglers. We're going to
jinglers.
jingle your spines. We're going to jingle them all around.
Just jiggle
And we're
them up.
gonna, yeah. When I think of that, I think of that Earl thing. I'm like, if you know what Earl is, if you know, you know. That's what we're about to do to your spine today. We're gonna Earl jingle it. So yeah, so today we're going to really spook you out, and I don't think you're gonna look at your favorite scary movies the same again after this.
Some
So
of these I
without
knew, but
further,
some of them I didn't.
yeah, I didn't I knew, so I have seen the reason I picked the movies that I did today is I've seen them and they were ones that actually like the first one that I'm going to talk about. Me and Matt watched it. I saw the trailer. Trailer made my skin crawl. It just had an air to it.
Hmm.
And like I this one I knew was based off of a true story because it said it and I looked it up afterwards. Um Scared the ever living daylights out of me. Like I was like, I can't imagine living in this time and this happening. Second one, I've seen the movie, did not know it was as bad as it was. And I did not know it was based on a true story because it was so bad. So I was like, oh,
Yikes.
yeah. Yikes is right. That's like the perfect way. Yikes. It was so, I don't know. I was
It's
doing
always those
research.
movies that you watch, and then at the end, it's like, oh, by the way, based on a real, and they start showing all like the real pictures of like the people,
It's
and
like,
you're
why are you
like,
gonna hit me with that? I'm already
oh
scared
no.
enough. I'm already
Yeah.
gonna sleep with like all my lights on. And then I think the third one's pretty popular. The third one's pretty popular. A lot of people know about it, but it's still to this day is one of those things that like I think about it, and when you see the pictures, which I have pictures, so I will show them on here. I'm going to give everybody a trigger warning before we even get into any of this. This is probably going to be a little bit of a gruesome episode. There's going to be violence, possibly topics of sexual abuse or something like that, and just gore and violence. So
The ick.
just be prepared if you want to tune out now or shut it off, then do it, but it's going to be pretty heinous. So you've been warned. If you proceed past this point, it's your own fault. All
Yep. Let me just say too,
right.
after seeing your TikTok about that movie Hush, literally I started laughing so hard because as soon as it came up, I remember we're watching it and we're like, something's wrong with the TV. It was just straight silent. We're doing cables. We're unplugging the TV. We're turning up we're like, something's wrong with our TV. And so the next day we tried again and we're like, what's going on with this movie? As soon as she like started signing and the subtitles came up, we were like,
wow.
She's deaf. She's deaf. We just did all this to our TV and she's deaf. I felt so stupid.
If I watched that happen, I would literally die laughing.
It was
I'd be
just like, what's wrong with this? I was like, it's just this movie. Like, we're clicking on other stuff. We're like, what's wrong with it? We're like, it's us. We're what's
wasn't
wrong
it a
with
good movie though? Wasn't
Yeah.
it kick-ass? Me and Matt literally watched that on my lap. We were dating when it came out and we were like at his mom's house and we were like curled up in bed with my laptop and just watching it. And we literally, after it was done, we like looked at each other like, that was the best slasher film we have like
Yeah.
seen since like the 90s.
Real creepy. But that was
Yeah.
my fun little, as soon as I saw it, I just started cracking up and I was like, I remember our dumb selves like, our TV's not working. And I'm like, we're just dumb.
Like, hey, filmmakers, could you maybe put like a warning on here that
Oh,
it's
by
like
the
not
way.
us?
Yeah.
But yeah, so go watch Hush if you haven't seen it yet. I don't know if it's still on Netflix or if they made it available on other platforms, but it's just sick. It's just like creepy and sick, and it's really good cat and mouse. So check it out. Oh, I got some indigestion. Sorry. I'm like failing over here. Well, do you want to kick it off, Rachel?
All right. So I'll start with the movie that has scared me the most, for real. It is The Strangers. Literally, I think it's because it's the real life aspect of it, or like this could happen. Like, that's like my worst fear. Like, someone coming into my house, like someone breaking into my house. That is like my, oh God, like that's real. So this movie just creep me out. This is my one that's like, I just can't. So The Strangers is a home invasion movie that, oh my God, I can't even. So this couple, they're going on either like a vacation, or they're coming home from like a date or like a wedding or something like that.
I think it
And
was their
so,
honeymoon. It was like they were
was it
going
their
to a
honeymoon?
remote cabin for like their honeymoon.
Yep.
Yeah.
And of course it was a cabin that has like no walls. It's just windows. Like it's just all windows. And I just don't understand people that don't have curtains on their windows, or like,
That's
like
the first thing we did when we moved in.
you're a
Blinds and
psychopath if you
curtains.
don't have curtains on your windows. Like, if I can see in, like, no.
Yeah.
So these masked people show up and invade the home, and it's kind of like cat and mouse, like, the chase and the hide and the trying to kill these people. But, so The Strangers is inspired by the real life crimes of the Manson family murders.
Oh.
So let me scroll over here. So the Manson family murders were a series of gruesome and infamous murders carried out by the followers of Charles Manson, the cult leader. In the late 1960s. In 1969, Manson instructed his followers to commit a series of brutal killings, an attempt to incite a race war, what he called Helter Skelter, and he believed that it was predicted in a Beatles song. The most notorious of the murders was August 8th to 9th, 1969, when they brutally murdered actress Sharon Tate, who was 8 months pregnant, and 4 others in her home. So the victims were stabbed, shot, beaten to death in a gruesome manner. These murders shocked the nation and marked the beginning of a very high-profile trial. Manson and several of his followers were then eventually arrested, tried, and convicted for their murders. The Manson family murders were considered one of the most disturbing and infamous crime sprees in American history, and have lasted impact on true crime and pop culture. So Charles Manson and his followers were sentenced to life in prison, and this is a very, very dark case.
See, the Manson, it's funny because I just did a TikTok on them.
Yeah.
It's so
weird people.
Yeah, it's really like, it's crazy because we're also going to talk about another like cult following case today, but it blows my mind that one single person can influence like a mass number of people with the right tactics and psychological like brainwashing like techniques. Like, it's just crazy how strong the human mind is.
Because he didn't even kill anyone. He
No,
he didn't do
no.
anything.
But like so I recommended two movies, and I think that The Strangers, if you want a good just spooky movie day and you want it to be like themed, do a Manson family theme day, watch The Strangers, watch The Haunting of Sharon Tate is probably one of my favorite movies in that my favorite categories, because it gives you the perspective of Sharon Tate and the days leading up to her murder, and then they kind of reconstruct what they think took place and what it would have looked like when the Manson family infiltrated the home and tortured and killed them over that span of hours. What's craziest though, and I didn't know that this was true, was that Sharon Tate claimed to have had premonitions of her death. So that's where the filmmaker came up with the idea for The Haunting of Sharon Tate, because it shows, I don't want to give too much away, but basically it's based off the fact that she had these premonitions of the night to come, and kept talking about how like something was wrong, and yeah. So I mean, I didn't know that was real. I thought that was more of like a theatrical like add-in. But
I
then yeah,
mm,
The Haunting of Sharon Tate is really, really creepy. Like, have you seen it?
no.
You have to watch
I'm gonna
it.
have to watch that one.
Has Hilary Duff, man. Good old Lizzie McGuire.
Oh,
Yeah, and she plays a kick-ass Sharon Tate, dude. I'm like, it was hard the first time I watched it because I couldn't take Lizzie McGuire out of it, and I was like, this
yeah.
is like weird. But when you watch it like a second time around, you're like, she actually did really good in it, and it's like really scary and sad. But then the third movie that I recommended on the TikTok was Charlie Says. Watch this movie and yuck. It just is what's so creepy about it is like what I said before. You don't understand how one person can brainwash people. And it's like fear is the biggest tactic. Like you can make people do crazy things with fear. And I think that was one of his major tactics was people are afraid of what they don't know. And I think he played on that a lot from all the research that I've done on that family. And I did a
Hmm.
report on them in my psychology class. So the Manson families, they've always been not to sound like a serial killer, because I'm not like a weirdo, but like I'm always interested in psychology. But they've always interested me because I just never understood how like these women just became so
Yep. And like all the
brainwashed.
footage of like them and like the trials and stuff like that, and them like singing their songs and showing up, like
Well,
just
do you know what I found out? So
weird.
my husband got that Leatherface game, and we've been playing it with his brother for PlayStation.
Hmm.
And there's a part in there where Sissy is singing this song, right? And like it's kind of a creepy little tune that she hums when you're walking around with her or whatever. And we found out that that's the same song that the Manson sisters would sing, and they
Oh
took it
god.
from there's a video of them singing it. I don't know if they're coming out of court or something, and I can't remember what the song is, but it is so creepy. Like if I heard that, I would just
Yeah.
throw myself down a well. End it all. No way. Like, yeah. So I thought that was kind of neat because I didn't know that they added that little touch in there, but just to make it a little bit more sadistic, I guess.
Yeah. I had no idea that's what it was based off of, because it's the mass killers, they're coming in, and it's like not like they are just coming in and automatically killing you. It's just
No.
like just this mind game of like not knowing where they are, and like all of the oh god.
And you know what else got me? The
That oh,
record player.
oh gosh, I can't.
I don't like
Mm-mm.
record players in scary movie.
Like that
Like
creepy just music and
the
just the
crackling and just like
yes.
there's just something about a record player. Like if I'm home alone and a record player goes off, if my record player goes off,
I
I'm
think
moving.
any movie or any music in a scary
Yeah.
movie is like that is horrible.
Or that sound, like speaking of Texas Chainsaw again, that sound, do you know like what I'm talking about? It's like it almost sounds like a camera going off, and it's like and it like I don't know the sound. I can't do it, but that was terrible. It sounded like a dying bird, but like it's like this weird like sound. And when you hear it, you're just like, oh, I don't like it. Like it's like touching a microfiber cloth. You're just like, oh. But yeah, so that's how we feel about that.
Yes. Ugh. That
So
one
yeah.
destroys my soul. I think they have a second one, and we watched the second one, and it's just as like
How many
eerie.
of them were there? Because I remember we saw I think it was Pray at Night.
I think there's just two. The
Maybe it
Strangers
was
and
the
the
second
Strangers
one. We saw the
2.
second one. That was good.
Yeah.
But it's like
Yes, that movie, it definitely got me.
I
I'm
think
not about that one.
that famous line, and like because you were home, and
Yes. Ah!
it's like no other reason. It's not like because I hate you or there's no motive. It's
Nope,
just
you
because
were
like
just
for
here.
fun.
I'm like,
Yeah.
no. Nope.
Yeah.
That
So
one
now
just
that we
like
have extreme like upset stomach, indigestion, and diarrhea from talking about that topic,
yes.
now we'll move on to the second one and re-traumatize ourselves.
Yeah, here we go. All right. So I then have the Clove Hitch Killer. And this one starts off where the son suspects his father of murder because of discovering some like weird pictures in the house. I feel like I watched this one either recently, like this one's pretty recent in my mind. Once I kind of saw it on the list. So soon he wonders if his dad might have committed a series of murders that have been taking place in the local area, but finds it hard to believe his own father is capable of such crimes. So this movie is based off of the real life BTK Dennis Rader, who
Isn't that
committed.
one of your favorite ones?
Oh, I hate this guy. This one is like, I feel like because he's such a nerd about all of it, because he was so desperate for like attention. Like, oh, are the cops able to trace this way? And he would send these little letters, or he would, he was just this guy that was just so desperate for like attention from people and like the notoriety behind it,
What a
that it was just
jerk.
like, yeah. So he was almost like
It's a wiener.
Richard Ramirez, railroad killer guy that I can't even think of his name right now, where it was just like opportunity type stuff. It wasn't like, hey, I'm watching you, like I'm gonna kill you because of, you shouldn't kill anyone. But it was more like opportunity. Like he would go in as like a repair guy, or, the security system guy, and then come back later and like kill the family after he kind of like scoped it. So the
Okay.
BTK killer, whose real name was Dennis Rader, was notorious for terrorizing Wichita, Kansas between the 1970s and the 1980s. BTK stands for bind, torture, and kill, because he just thought, he was so cool. Which, that was his motive of tying people up and torturing them and then killing them. So he murdered 10 people and then sent taunting letters to the media and police. He eluded to authorities for many years, but eventually was captured, tried, sentenced to 10 consecutive life terms in prison in 2005. So he was one that was definitely living like a double life of, he was trying to be the family guy. I think he was some kind of like higher up, not a pastor, but like doing stuff like that at church, the Boy Scout leader, the community guy,
Always the Boy Scout leader.
it's just those kind of like people
Always.
that he was living this double life. And, it totally like baffled law enforcement because they didn't know who this guy was. So I had some more. So the first clue he left for police was in a book at the library. And so he called the local paper to let them know where he could find a confession. And in his first letter, he gave himself this name. He's like, they're going to call me BTK, bind, torture, and kill, because he liked to torture and murder,
If you
Sorry, that was mine. That was my I accidentally hit like
Don't,
this
I was like,
ad.
don't with your spooky stuff.
You know me. Us in the disembodied voices.
Good. That just made my heart like just
I was trying to like discreetly pull up the freaking, it said the sound was off. And I'm like
That's how it always gets you though.
tried to pull up the trailer because it's so creepy. And I'm like, you have to see it for the one that I present. I'm trying to get myself in order.
So some of the similarities between BTK and the Clove Hitch movie was that they're both ritualistic killings. You know, binding and torturing, killing 10 victims, all women, you know, before killing them. And so they were trying to get some kind of like sexual gratification like from these. So they would take these pictures of these women and yeah, I can't. So,
That's so
you know, they would
weird.
stalk their victims, spy on them, create this plan, how to abduct and kill them. Clove Hitch and BTK both take like over decades long time of torture and killing before, you know, getting found out.
How many victims did he have total?
I think they said his was 10. So he started in the 70s, killing 2 women between 1977 and 1978. He took a brief hiatus until about 1985, killing 3 more women, and then his final victim in 1991. And so kind of like, oh, this is the best part. So he was like super arrogant about his crimes and, you know, the notoriety for it and proud of his skills. So he decided to send in the last victim's driver's license and, you know, little like souvenir type stuff to the police. And so one of those pieces of evidence was a floppy disk, and this is how he got himself caught. So one of those, it was the floppy disk, and it was traced back to the church and contained pieces of DNA, and it was being able to, you know, go back to that first crime scene, and he was convicted of 10 counts of first-degree murder. So, yeah. So in the Clove Hitch, they talk about, you know, keeping like keepsakes, like licenses. And in that movie, the son is like trying to put together these things. And in real life, BTK, his daughter has come out a lot and said about stuff where it was like, literally, we had no idea. There was no signs, there was no nothing. All of a sudden he's like, hey, can you trace things from floppy disk? And the police were like, no, we can't. And secretly, I guess you can. And that's how they got him, as they traced it back to the church that he worked at, volunteered at, whatever, you know, his role was there. And then that's how they got him.
That's crazy.
Like, he was just so desperate for the like, oh, look at this, and look, I'm going to send these letters, and why don't you go to the library because I left a letter there. Like, he was basically just like handing it out to them.
Some people are just like,
he just wanted the
he's doing the
attention so
most.
bad. Yes.
He's doing the most.
Yes.
I'd be like, please don't.
I'm like, can you
let's
stop?
not. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, his daughter has come out a lot about, you know, all the things going on, and, you know, that they literally just had like no clue.
Dude.
I'm just like,
I'm befuzzled. Like, I don't understand these killers.
no. And that he kind of went through a period of like, you know, hey, I'm gonna like just take a break for a little bit, but then I'm gonna like restart again.
It's like
after
Dahmer.
like 10 years. Yeah.
Did Dahmer do that? Like, he took like a long ass hiatus.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. I just think that's so strange. Like, you just wake up and you're like, you know what? I think I'm gonna
take a pause on this.
I'm gonna practice abstinence from murder. Like, what? You've been doing it for 10 years. What? Like, I don't understand. Like, not that I want somebody to continue murdering, but like,
no.
It's like, what? Why? Like, why all of a sudden? I'm telling you, if the cell was a real thing and there was a way we could do that, I would offer myself up to the FBI. I would hop in that little pod and I would be like, I will hop right into this person's brain.
Yeah.
Because I have so many questions.
Yeah.
So many questions. Like, I just want to know what it looks like in there. I'll probably come back like so traumatized and like mentally unstable for the rest of my life. But like, I just want to know. Like, I want to know, like, what are you thinking that you're like, you know what? I think I'm gonna like the thought process of like taking a human being. Okay, so we'll use like who was it? Is it Buffalo Bill? Is that his name? I feel like I'm
But
saying no, yeah, Buffalo Bill, right?
yeah,
Yeah. He used to steal women and like throw them in the back of his van and then like do weird stuff in his basement, right? So like picking somebody up out of a parking lot and like tossing them into my car. Let's start there. That's number one. I can't, I feel uncomfortable hugging people, let
yes.
alone like getting the balls to like walk up
I'd be
and
like, whoops,
toss a
whoops,
lady
no,
in. Yeah,
didn't mean it, didn't mean it. I
I
changed
would
my
be like
mind.
those. You ever see those robbers on like World's Worst Criminals where like they go to rob a place and the person like retaliates and they're like, "You're not robbing me," and they're like, "I'm so sorry," like, and they just
Yeah,
leave. That
yeah.
would be me. Like I would try to kidnap somebody. I would like try to throw them in my van and they'd probably like hit me. And I'd be like, you know what? I'm really sorry about this. I didn't think this
I just
through.
need a redo.
Yeah,
Sorry. I
like
didn't mean it.
this I don't know what I was doing. I'm really sorry. Probably offer them like a free ice cream coupon and like move on with my day. It just
Exactly.
wouldn't like I that's number one. Like I just don't understand. Like you have to be like cold-blooded, no emotion, no nerves, no anxiety, no
Nope.
nothing, like dead inside
Yes.
to do that. And then it's like, and then to take it a step further, and again, I'm using Buffalo Bill as an example because he was out there.
Is he the one that
Like
skinned he skinned
he's the one
people?
that like tucks his pee-pee and like would like dance and like in the mirror in like Silence of the Lambs. Oh gosh, is
So
Peach
good.
there?
No, I got my headphones
I
in.
was like, I was like, Lord, please forgive me. I hope she does not say that at daycare tomorrow.
No, I
But
got my
like,
headphones in.
yeah, there's like that really weird scene in Silence of the Lambs where like he's like, put the lotion in the basket. And he's like doing like that like wiener dance. He like and he's like putting wigs on and like the lipstick and he's
Yes. BTK
just
was that way too. He was like dressing in women's nightgowns and women's underwear and like taking pictures of himself. Like he was the
it's
same
just
stuff.
yeah, so it's like and like listen, we are like this is a judgment free zone. We support LGBTQIA. Like we're all about, like that's fine because like that's
Do
who
your
you
things on your own
are.
time, but you don't have to kill people and then do your weird stuff.
Yes,
Do your
that's more
things.
so what we're touching on is the fact that like these men were like this was not like their personality. They were just like not personality, sorry. Oh my gosh, I can't think today. This is not who they were. This is just like a almost like an alternate personality. Like it
Yeah.
was like an alias. Like it was weird. It was just like they were this person and then they turned into Patricia. So like it wasn't me, that was Patricia. It's another good movie if you haven't seen it. But
Oh
yeah, so
my
like it's just
God.
like and then to do that, like it's like I don't and again not to be like TMI, but it's like I don't even want to fart in front of somebody. Like if I let a little squeak out, I will never face you again. I will die before I ever see you again. I would be so embarrassed. Then to be this person who is flat out just like got you down
Get
in a
in.
well
Yeah. Gotcha. Mm-mm.
and they're doing that kind of stuff and you're just like it just yeah.
That's why I totally believe like there's something missing in your brain. It's not all cooked. Like you're not
No,
cooked all the way or
no.
something. Like there's you gotta
It's bad. It is like I just don't like it's just there's so many examples of like serial killers and like horror movies that are based off of it's so hard to pick too. Like it's like today we have how many? There's like lists of like 50, 60, like all these horror movies that are based off of these like crimes and you're just like just when you think it can't get any stranger,
Yep.
it does. So, on to the
All right.
next.
Here's my last one, and I'm gonna do a little backwards
Okay.
and talk about the crime first,
Oh,
and
okay.
then tell you what it's based off of. So this is the Gainesville Ripper, whose real name was Danny Rolling, and he was a serial killer who committed a series of gruesome crimes in Gainesville, Florida during August 1990. So his first killing spree involved the murders of 5 college students, and his methods were brutal and violent. He gained notoriety for breaking into the victims' residence, often targeting young women, and then subjecting them to extreme violence and torture before killing them. So his actions terrorized Gainesville community, and it was that's kind of like almost like Bundy-esque with his like killing in the dorm rooms. So in 1990, Danny Rolling was apprehended and later convicted for the Gainesville murders. He was then sentenced to death and executed in 2006. So this is definitely on the list of like crazy like serial killer guys. So one of the most iconic movies, Scream, is based off of the Gainesville Ripper. So oh, he even says right here he wanted to be the next Ted Bundy. Like, how do you like just emulate your life? Like, oh, yep, I wanna do that too.
Again,
Yeah.
I don't understand. I don't understand. It just, I don't
So
know.
all of his stuff was based, they base Scream, off of this, guy killing young people, and he was operating between 1998 and 1990, where he murdered 8 people, 4 of them being students in the University of Florida. He also was known to spy on women in their homes.
Oh, so he was a peeper.
Yeah.
He was a
Yep.
peeping Tom.
Yep.
Dang.
So they
And Scream
definitely,
is like one of my favorite scary movies too.
yeah, it's a good one. So they wanted to do, a slasher story, and the fear of like being watched. So like, ugh, yuck, like real life stuff. Like I can't.
That
Like
opening scene, that opening scene with Drew Barrymore, man.
Mhm.
Like, how many times have you been home alone and like you're making dinner or something, and it's just like, again with the windows, like you're looking like
Mhm.
my kitchen window, like sometimes I forget to like close the blinds, and so it's like
Yeah.
I'll be like washing dishes or something, and I'm like, oh,
Somebody could
I
just see
can't see
me.
out, but somebody can probably like be
Mhm.
looking at me.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't like it.
One of my favorite like memes right now going around is like Scream's the scariest one because he wanted to talk on the phone. And I'm like, that's so me because I do not talk on the phone. I'm like, unless your name is in my contact list or I know who it is, we're not talking on the phone.
And that's on anxiety,
I'm like,
period.
for all of my business stuff, like, sorry, my phone number is no longer on the internet.
People are gonna call like your business number and it's gonna be like, sorry, this number is no longer in service.
Dude, for real. I told my mom, I was like, I have a voicemail that says, hey, if you're interested in our, training services, please go to our website and fill out an inquiry. And I was like, I literally need to change it. Be like, go to our website, send me an email, send me a text. I will not call you back.
Like, this is a no contact training
Yeah, this
service.
is, yes, no contact. Please do not call me.
The
I'm
only time
always
you'll hear
like,
my voice is in person when I meet
yes.
you.
I'm always like, please don't hang up. Please don't hang up. Please don't hang up.
Like, please just pay, drop your dog off. I don't want to meet you.
Yeah, yeah.
No, no. You're personable though. You're personable.
Yeah, I'm just not a talk on the phone kind of gal. So when I saw that, I was like, that's me. I was like, Scream would not get me because I would not answer the phone.
He would just no, he wouldn't answer the phone. He just then you would just be like surprise attack while making Jiffy
Oh,
popcorn, you know.
I would have not known he was coming.
Dude, that it's just such a classic. I love watching that every Halloween time.
Yeah, that's a good
Just so
one.
spooky.
Mm-hmm.
The
That
vibe. I
is.
like the soundtrack too.
Hmm.
It has a good
I just
like
need to put that in the background of my day.
you're just driving somewhere and just listen to the
Yeah.
Scream soundtrack.
Yeah.
What did you see the new one?
I have not seen the new ones.
Okay. I thought the
I
last one
can't
was really
remember. I
lame.
think that like what? There's like 6 of them.
Yeah. The one with Emma Roberts was really, really good. I liked that one when it initially came out, so I had high hopes for when the next one was coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Awful. It was awful. This newest one, it was good. It wasn't my favorite, but it was a lot better than the one that was before it.
I just feel like it's hard to like the original, and then you're trying really hard with like the rest of them. Like,
Yeah. Well,
I don't
sometimes I just
know.
feel like so like 90s like horror movies, even like 80s, like they're just there's a simple formula to making it work. And like you don't have to do too much.
No.
Like it's scarier because it's more simple and it's more
Yeah.
realistic. Like when you
Yep.
start like getting into just like and everything's got to be so gory nowadays.
hmm I'm not a
I'm like I don't need
huge
to see
like,
somebody get disemboweled and then like
yeah.
wear their intestines as a necklace. Like
I'm not
what?
a huge gory type gal.
Yeah, I'm not a
Not
Saw
huge.
person.
No. I think I saw like the first one, and then it was just like, oh God. I'm like, I can't do this.
I literally saw a meme of Saw and it brought me to tears. It was
I think
like
they're on like
TikTok.
TikTok right now.
That's what I saw. It was like me trying because I'm deaf as hell and without my glasses I can't see. It was like me trying to follow directions and I was like I would be lost. But between my
Yep.
ADD like and my I'm like one taste bud away from being Helen Keller. Like I can't hear.
Jesus.
I seriously can't. I can't hear. I am practically blind without my glasses, but I never wear them. And like I'm just a mess.
God.
So like yeah, so it's pretty bad. And I'm like if I got picked up by Saw, I'd be the first one to die without a doubt.
You're like, sorry. I just
I literally put on Facebook, I was like, just stick my stick my face in a bear trap and set it off. I'm like, because there's just there I would not be a participant. Like I would not
no,
participate in your activities.
no, sorry.
I'd be still like working on like task one and everybody would be like on to the next freaking death trap. So
Or you
you
know how
got
many
that.
trucks I've seen lately that have like the tree trunks in them? Like, what is that movie? Final
Everybody
Destination?
knows
Yeah,
is
you don't get
Final
behind one of
Destination.
those. You don't get behind one of those.
They're always
I've
in
seen them
Dover
like,
too.
I've seen them recently, and I was like, oh God. I was like,
Like we've
people are
already
straight
seen that
behind
movie.
them. Mm-mm.
Well, then I was pissed because I just saw my uncle said he watched the trailer and it didn't have anything like this in it, but I saw a movie poster for apparently there's a new Final Destination coming out and it had a cruise ship. And I'm like, you son of a bitches. I was like, I just went on my first cruise. I loved it. I had a great time. Do not ruin this for me. Like, I was like, if you make a Final Destination on a cruise ship, I will never forgive you. I will buy every copy and wipe my butt with it. Like, just no way. You can't do that to me. Like you've already ruined the log trucks. I'm afraid of
Yeah,
fire escapes.
yeah.
I really am suspect about roller coasters.
Oh, I'm not a rides kind of gal either.
And I have like a fear that I never had before was like I get very anxious walking down the aisles of Home Depot.
Hmm.
It's one of the newer
Not
ones.
not
Just
not one I would think about.
yeah. If you see some of the newer ones, there's a I don't know what they call it in the movie, but it's like a Lowe's or a Home Depot. I got trust issues because of those movies
Oh
and I keep
no.
watching them. All right.
All
Anyways, we
right.
digress as normal.
It's fine.
Um,
What you got?
so oh, I
You
got.
got it.
So there's a movie called The Town That Dreaded Sundown. Have you ever
Hmm.
seen it?
Mm-mm. I don't think I've seen any of the ones that you
So
chose.
if the strangers freaks you out, this one like okay, so I'm gonna screen share. We're going to watch the trailer because it is it's terrifying and what the trailer sold me and then the movie is just it's creepy. It's like a slow burn and it's just creepy and like it could very well be like a realistic thing. So without further ado, let's watch it. Oh, make sure my sound is on this time. Can you hear it?
Grandma,
Yeah.
you remember
Yep.
anything about the murders? Your great grandpa and your great grandma lived in this house when it happened. He was the boogeyman, they said. Can't catch the boogeyman. Can't kill the boogeyman. Now, before that summer, everybody would leave their doors unlocked. And after the summer, you saw a stranger, you'd run the other way. And now, he's back.
I'm gonna throw up.
The town of Texarkana has awoken to a gruesome act of violence.
He could have killed me right there.
Yeah.
He chose that girl to be his messenger.
People say that he was a demon or a spirit.
So consumed by vengeance. We are not hunting a ghost. We are after a flesh and blood killer. Just about everyone around here's got some kind of blood on their hands.
Where's the people in the potato sack masks?
Hey, it seems.
It's okay. It's someday turn out right. It's almost.
Oh my god.
Dude. So yeah, so it was
I
the
love that
trailer,
everyone
it's-
that's like everyone that's gonna be listening to this is just gonna listen to 3 minutes of silence.
it's intense. It's intense. So
Oh god.
but I
It's the
needed
potato
you
sack
so that you
masks.
understand how scary it was.
No, I can't.
It
Ugh.
yeah, it freaked me out. So the scariest thing about this, like we said, is that it's true. So this is what they assumed this guy looked like. The scariest thing about the town that dreaded sundown is that it's based upon the Texarkana Moonlight Murders, or also known as the Phantom Killer. So the scariest thing about this is the fact that he was never caught. They still to this day have no idea.
I think I know. This sounds familiar. Familiar.
So it just was like, it was absolutely terrifying. Basically he wore like this pillowcase over his head and would just target couples. And he would, like, if there was a lot of things where like lovers lanes, and you know, there was just really no rhyme or reason to it. There was like a little bit of a pattern. And he basically, how do I put this? I'm trying not to be like too graphic, because like I know people want the graphic stuff, but it happened over a period of 10 weeks. And like the way that he like killed these people was just like really like creepy and just like scary. And like you kind of heard in the trailer, like the town was like insistent that this guy was like, they like the boogeyman, like that he was a ghost, or because they couldn't trace anything to him, they couldn't figure out who he was. And it was just 10 weeks of pure like nightmare fuel, and it always happened at like sundown. So this happened in 1946, and it basically happened between twin cities that sit on the border in Miller County, Arkansas, and Bowie County, Texas, or Bowie, I'm not sure how you say that. So several agencies of all levels of law enforcement were set on this guy to find him. Several of all different specialties.
And then
And
it's
they,
always like in those olden times when they didn't have like all the technology, like everyone's ruining crime scenes. So it's like,
yeah, and he
gosh.
evaded. Oh my goodness. He evaded all these attempts to capture him. So he attacked 8 people in total. And there was really no rhyme or reason, but they did say that there were patterns, which I kind of described earlier, is that all the victims were couples. The killer targeted them on weekend evenings. And then they were killed on like lovers lanes or isolated road areas, except for an attack that happened at like a rural farmhouse. There were 2 victims, Jim Hollis and Mary, I don't know if it's Mary Jean Laurie, which was like an assault only. So it says the violent crime spree of the Phantom Killer started on February 22nd, 1946 at 11:45 p.m. Jim Hollis, which he was 25, and his date, Mary Jean Larry, 19, had gone to the movies, and afterwards they parked their car on a secluded road that was considered a local lover's lane area. They were interrupted by a man wearing a white cloth mask with just eye holes. He was shining a flashlight through the window of the driver's side of the car. Hollis told the stranger that he had the wrong car. The hooded man replied, "I don't want to kill you, fellow, so do what I say." The gunman ordered the pair out of the car, instructed Hollis to take off your goddamn britches. Hollis was then struck in the head twice with the pistol, and then the sound of Hollis's skull fracturing led Larry to tell investigators later that she thought her boyfriend had been shot because that's how loud it was. Hit him so
Oh
hard that
my.
it sounded, yeah. As Hollis fell to the ground with a fractured skull, the assailant turned to Mary and struck her with a blunt object. Then he told her to run. She fled while the attacker stomped on Hollis's body. The attacker caught up with her and asked her why she was running, even though he had told her to run. Mary was struck again and then sexually assaulted with the assailant's pistol. Yeah. During the assault, Mary said, "Go ahead and kill me," which caused the attacker to flee. Mary was able to make it to a nearby house and rouse the residents, who called the police. Meanwhile, Hollis regained consciousness and flagged down a passing car, who also alerted the police. Both Hollis and Larry described the attacker as around 6 feet tall, but Mary said he was light-skinned African American, and Jim said that he was a tanned white man. Mary would move to Oklahoma. The trauma was too much for her to live near the incident. And Jim Hollis told police their assailant would kill the next couple he attacked. So yeah. So it just, again, coming back to the simplistic things, he was so creepy because he struck at nighttime in like desolate areas, and it wasn't like he wore anything crazy or was like deformed, or he just had a simple white sheet with eye holes and like gave like counter what's the word I'm looking for, like instructions that like counteracted each other. So he's like telling her to run, and then he's like, "Wait, why are you running?" And it's like, if that doesn't tell you that somebody's a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, like, you know, like I don't know what is. So I mean, Hollis was right. The next couple, Richard Griffin and Polly Ann Moore, turned into a double homicide. On March 24th, 1946, at around 9 a.m., a motorist discovered Richard Griffin, 29, and his girlfriend, 17-year-old Polly Ann Moore, in Griffin's car parked about a mile outside of Texarkana. At first glance, the couple appeared to be sleeping, and Griffin was found between the front seat on his knees, head resting on his hands, his pockets turned out, while Moore was face down in the back seat. Closer investigation revealed that Griffin had been shot twice while in the car, and it is surmised that Moore was shot in the head while on a blanket outside of the car and then dragged into the back seat. Like it was.
He was killing both of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not even just like, "Oh, I'm gonna leave you." Like,
No.
I wasn't sure if he was just killing the man in the situation.
No. And it's weird because like he let that first couple go, and it's like he ran off after the girl was like, please, dude, just kill me. Like she,
Mhm.
like, you know what I'm saying? This is why I would be safe. I would be like, I'm not running. Like, I am not trying to run from you right now. I'm not putting the energy into fighting. If you're just going to end up shooting me anyways, like, you might as well just shoot me now. Like, not happening.
Exactly.
I'm not spending
I'm
my
not
last
running
5 minutes
from
on
you.
Earth, like, out of breath and, like, ready to throw up because I don't exercise. So, yeah. So I'd probably be safe. He'd probably be like, oh my gosh, she has no will to live. Like, I gotta go find somebody that's actually like terrified to die. Oh my god, it's so morbid. I'm just kidding. That's
Oh my
terrible.
God.
But anyways, so no, but seriously, I mean, it was terrible. It was terrible.
It is terrifying.
Yeah, so I don't know why he let that first couple go, and that's what's so creepy is there was just no like they never had an answer, no logic, nobody caught him. But back then, you know, with the second the well, not second, I would say the first couple that was actually murdered, the investigation was compromised by an overnight rain. And it wasn't locked down by law enforcement, so curious locals and oblivious officers, they walked pretty much all over the evidence. And the only thing that was recovered was a 32 cartridge that was recovered at the scene.
I just feel like that's such a like thing like back in the day where it's just like, hey, there's nothing to do today. Let's go through this crime scene and like see what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's he basically, I mean, he basically it was either sexual assault or his like favorite thing was like gun like just shooting them. That was like his thing. Like he just it wasn't like strangulation or like different forms of he it just was like he sexually assaulted the one victim with the gun and like then like bashed the other one over the head with a gun. So like that's like his main weapon. Um but they ran like fingerprints and everything like that and it was just crazy.
Mhm.
So the one that I am going to talk about kind of touching upon how you said does he kill one, does one survive? There is a case of Virgil and Katie Stark. So one was dead, one survived. So on May 3rd at around 9 p.m., farmer Virgil Stark sat in a chair in his living room reading a newspaper. His wife, Katie, was in bed when she heard the sound of breaking glass. When she got up to investigate, she found her husband still in his chair, but slumped over and bleeding profusely. He had been shot twice in the head from an outside window. Before she could react, Katie was also shot twice in the head, but miraculously, she didn't die. Crawling across the floor, she heard the attacker struggling to get through a kitchen window in the back of the house. Dude. Katie fled out the front door
This is
in her
home invasion
nightgown.
stuff.
Yeah. Katie fled out the front door in her nightgown to a neighbor's house and she was rushed to a hospital and she survived. And she continued to live in Texarkana until her death in 1994. How? And this guy was like, this is what scares me the most is like, I would feel the like immense need to like move. So yeah, so
Absolutely.
that's, I mean, basically, I mean, this is Texarkana, so people were stocking up on guns. There was
But
tons
they were the
of
same kind of people that would just be like leaving the door unlocked. Like no
yeah, but
freaking
that was
way.
like that was the age. I mean, people they
Yeah.
just didn't lock doors. It was you trusted your neighbors, and the scariest part is was this a neighbor? Like, was this
Yeah.
were you living next to? Like, you know, you never know. So basically, like everybody was in full panic and they went through this whole investigation. They had the FBI, Texas Rangers, Miller County Sheriff's Department, Cass County Sheriff's Department, Texarkana Police, Arkansas State Police. And
They got the whole squad.
yeah, so local teens even tried hopping in at like I don't even know how to say that vigilantism. And they waited for the killer in parked cars. So I mean, they tried everything. They tried, you know, decoy tactics. They tried like
That's what I was
parked
about to say.
car.
Why didn't they set him up? Like
They
if he was
tried.
like
Yeah, they tried. He was just never caught, and he must have been like, I don't know if he was super smart or they had investigated so many suspects, and the only suspect that they came upon was UL Sweeney. He was a local car thief and counterfeiter, and he was
Can you imagine having the title of local car thief? Oh, it's just our local car thief.
like, yeah, no big deal. He just, it's only like 1 or 2 cars a week, nothing crazy. I can't.
Just our local car thief.
He's
It's
a local
fine.
car thief. Oh, that's just Rob. he just robs a couple cars. He don't mean nobody no harm.
No.
I can't. He stuck up Patrick last week, but no big deal. He kidnapped his
Jesus.
dog. It's really fine. Everything's fine.
It's
He's
all
a nice
good.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's never hurt nobody. I can't. But yeah, so it says Sweeney was fingered as the I can't hold on. I don't like that sentence. Okay, anyways. I don't like the way okay. Sweeney was fingered as the Phantom Killer by his wife Peggy when she was arrested as an accomplice in one of his car thefts. I would be a terrible news reporter.
Just the pause after was just the
It just I'm like
timing
that
of
doesn't
that.
sound right. I'm like, what English language? I hate it. I'm done. I would literally, if I was a news reporter, man, I would be like Steve Carell in Bruce Almighty. I'd be like, blah, 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 blah.
Oh my God.
Okay, well, now that I put naughty thoughts in everybody's head, this lady Peggy was like, she was pointing fingers at
Yep.
her husband and said, this is him. And this is because she was arrested as an accomplice in one of his car thefts. So it wasn't just, Yule that was the local car thief. It was also Peggy. Good job, Peggy. So yeah, so she provided some credible details about her husband's involvement in the murders. Then her story started changing and she began withholding information, likely due to the fear of her husband or being incriminated in the murders herself. So I don't know. It was, they basically charged him, but then she wouldn't testify against him.
Well, of course.
Yeah, so he was released from prison and just really nothing happened. He died in a Dallas nursing home around the same time as freaking Peggy. So yeah, so that is the town that dreaded sundown, the Texarkana moonlight murders, good lord. So check it out. It's very scary. The movie just is a heebie-jeebie. These next ones I'm going to try and make it short and sweet to the point because I know this has been like a longer episode. We are going to talk about the case that's called The Work of the Devil. And the movie is Borderland. So if you haven't seen Borderland, it's a little gruesome. It's good. I did not realize though that it was based on a true story. It may have said it and maybe I missed it. But it is based on the case of, and forgive me if I butcher this, Adolfo de Jesus Constanzo. And he killed a young spring breaker by the name of Mark Kilroy. So he was 21 years old. He was a University of Texas student. He was a junior. And this gentleman, they would later find out that he was tied to like way more than they kind of bargained for. So Mark Kilroy, he was basically on spring break. And they found he went missing and his family was like, okay, like, something weird is up. And I want to say it was Mexican police officers. They went and basically were searching for him and they went to Rancho Santa Elena and just found way more than they bargained for. So officials basically on both sides of the border had begun to suspect that black magic a couple of weeks before the bodies of Kilroy and 14 others were discovered. Because there was a lot of weird stuff going on. There was like signs of ritualistic things afoot. And then a psychic had reported a vision in which Kilroy's body appeared alongside what looked like a witch's cauldron. A Satanist in Brownsville had confessed to murdering Kilroy and burying his body on the beach. Though under questioning, he recanted the statement, likely due to fear and retaliation. When lawmen finally began to sort things out, the ritual killing seemed almost predestined. A map drawn 2 years ago by confessed mass killer Henry Lee Lucas had predicted with inexplicable accuracy that the bodies of the victims of satanic rituals would be found about where Kilroy and others were found. So, yeah.
And when was this?
This was give me 1 second. I want to say, oh gosh, I should know this. Please forgive me. We need like standby music.
If this was a recent or if this was a while
I want to
ago.
say I thought it was like it might have been the 90s.
Oh, okay.
I thought I had it written down. But yeah, it was pretty gruesome. So I'm gonna pull it up right here.
Those are always the craziest things. Like
It just
going
was
on vacation, like you're on spring break and then you get murdered. Like I think it was just like the 20th anniversary of like Natalie Holloway.
Yeah.
She was the one that got murdered on spring break, I think.
Yeah, so this is actually, it was right on the brink of the 90s. So
Okay.
it happened March 13th, 1989. Costanzo's henchman abducted a pre-med student, Mark Kilroy, from outside a Mexican bar and took him back to their ranch. He had been to Mexico on spring break. When Kilroy was brought to the ranch, Costanzo murdered him. And under pressure from Texan politicians, Mexican police initially picked up 4 of Costanzo's followers, including 2 of the Hernandez brothers. Police quickly discovered the cult and that Costanzo had been responsible for Kilroy's death. He sought a good superior brain for one of his ritual spells. So he wanted somebody that was super smart and believed that if they possess these qualities, that if the human sacrifice and then the brain matter that he needed for it would like make for a good recipe, I guess. So officers raided the ranch and what they thought was just a cartel like drug operation. When they cracked it open and they found this body, they just found so much more than what they were bargaining for. So when they raided the ranch, they discovered Costanzo's cauldron, just like the psychic had said. And this is the gross part. So it contained various items such as a dead black cat and a human brain. And 15 mutilated corpses were dug up at the ranch. One of them was Kilroy. Officials said Kilroy was killed by Costanzo with a machete chopped to the back of the neck when Kilroy tried to escape about 12 hours after being taken to the ranch.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's so much worse than I realized. And like I said, I mean, the movie is, yeah, the movie's bad. He had like followers that like, so they called him his henchmen, and they basically would do a lot of his like dirty work, like gathering his so on cold ingredients. So here it said in an interrogation room of the Matamoros jail, Elio Hernandez Rivera, Serafin Hernandez Garcia, and 2 other suspects who had been arrested at the ranch confessed to kidnapping Kilroy and witnessing his ritual sacrifice. I couldn't imagine being like a henchman and standing by and watching as you commit this kind of sacrifice. Like but it gets worse. But wait, there's more. So
Of course there is.
it's bad. It's bad. So Seraphin told investigators that he had buried Kilroy and he led the way to Kilroy's grave, which was marked by a piece of wire sticking out of the ground. The other end of the wire had been attached to Kilroy's spinal column so that when his body decomposed, members of the cult could pull out the vertebrae to make it into a necklace. I told you, Rachel. It's sick. It's bad. Yeah. I wish you all could see Rachel's face right now.
Oh my God. Ew.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's bad. So when Kilroy's body was uncovered, the commandant noticed that his legs had been cut off above the knees and asked Seraphin if that was part of the ritual. No, Seraphin said, it just made him easier to bury. Seraphin had a baby face, a weak chin, and a Zapata-like mustache that seemed to stick to his face by accident. He was no peasant, recently arrived on a wagon of Mazie. He was a spoiled suburban kid with a taste for designer jeans, tinted sunglasses, and fast American cars with cell phones. So he was bougie, is essentially what they were saying in longer words. Seraphin worked at gunpoint in the hot sun for hours, digging up bodies. He seemed to resent the forced labor, but was otherwise nonchalant, remorseless, curiously without passion. And by mid-afternoon, a dozen corpses lay in a row. Yeah, so it was really, really bad. They kind of went about and realized that he was involved in, like I said before, cartel, drug operation, black magic, human sacrifices, Satanist. Yeah. So it was really bad. So, I mean, I highly suggest, there's so much to it. It's terrible. The movie is grisly. But the last part that I feel like you guys need to hear about, because it is extra creepy, was that basically that Mexican journalists wrote about this story and they kind of dug deep into it, and they said the story wasn't about drugs, the story was about magic, and they described in grisly detail how the Satanists cut the hearts out of the victims, much as the ancient Aztecs had done. So they did it very, very old school. And they saw nothing distasteful in running photographs of the corpses. So like these Mexican journalists were like just posting
oh my God,
raw like unedited pictures of these like spring breakers. Like spring breakers were just going missing, and like, so like, can you imagine their poor parents?
just in a newspaper.
Yeah, pretty bad. So I mean, that's the nitty gritty. They were pretty much like just on the prowl, looking for children to kidnap, looking for like people that were vulnerable to sacrifice. And he thought that their whole reason behind doing these sacrifices and the black magic was that he believed that his cartel would continue to like reap the benefits and be successful because of these sacrifices. So he thought, I mean, the traditional like, I'm going to make a deal with the devil, for riches and in return for, instant gratification. So that's what he believed. And they basically also found 3 pots, which were small, and they contained chicken and goat heads, thousands of pennies, some bones, some gold beads. They found a large iron kettle with a cluster of wooden stakes immersed in a thick, evil-smelling goo of blood and body parts, both human and animal mixed together. And the iron kettle was surprisingly similar to the object described 2 weeks earlier by the psychic.
That's wild.
Yeah. So the last thing I will touch upon is how they describe the ceremony. So keep in mind, it's going to get a little gross. First, the high priest offered up the sacrifice. They would cut the victim's throat, or as in Kilroy's case, they would take off the top of his head with a machete. The victims were usually killed first, then mutilated, though not always. Then the brains, heart, lungs, and testicles were boiled in the iron kettle, and the resulting brew was passed among members. It's so hard to read this part because it just makes me sick to my stomach. It was passed along members so that they could drink and be sanctified. I told you it gets worse. It gets worse. Ugh. So after that, the laymen of the cult buried the remains in and around the corral behind the shed. The ultimate piety and conceit of the cult is unforgivable stupidity, was the abiding belief that this act of unholy communion would make its members invincible. So there you have it.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I told you it's dark. It's really, really,
That
really
stuff is
dark.
just so spooky. Just so like,
Yeah. And the craziest part was after like poor Helen Kilroy's mother had to listen all of this, right? In court and all that stuff. Her quote unquote, her like how she spoke to the killers and the things that she said, I don't feel any anger at all, to be honest with you. Said James Kilroy. Sorry, not Helen Kilroy. It was James Kilroy. And then Helen Kilroy asked people to pray for her son's murderers. That is strength, dude. If I had to listen to the fact that they just drank my son's like remains, I feel like I would go through the roof. Like you would have to physically like hold me back in that courtroom. Like it would take grown men. It would take an elephant.
good
Or like
God,
a Yeti.
that's disgusting.
Yeah, it would be bad. And then to wrap it up, I'm only going to use a couple because you guys probably already know this one. We're going to move on to our next one, which is the Jonestown Massacre. The movie is The Sacrament, which was okay. It wasn't the greatest, but it was okay. I highly suggest you might as well just watch a documentary on the Jonestown Massacre because to me that was
Drink the
scarier.
Kool-Aid.
Yep. So you guys have already probably heard that saying, don't drink the Kool-Aid. It again, coming back to this cult following, don't understand how something to this level. So they said that before 9/11 had happened, this was the largest like loss of life in the US. So then 9/11 happened and obviously became like the largest massacre of human life in the American history. But it's bad. So I will be showing some pictures. If you are skittish or you don't want to see that, I would just tune out now. But you have to understand the gravity of it. It's online. It wasn't it's not like graphic, but it's just to show the volume. So it is crazy. So the Jonestown Massacre, for those of you that are not familiar, was basically the death of more than 900 people in Guyana in November of 1978. So let that sink in. 900 people.
900 people was like, yep, this guy, he's got it.
Literally. And it's just, so it's crazy. I don't know. I'm just like, I can't get past the fact that like these people were like, oh yeah, like this is a good idea.
Yep.
And like we're gonna follow this guy because he seems trustworthy, but really the whole reason that these people did what they did was because he was being selfish. And we'll kind of get into that. So the person that I'm about to put up on the screen is Jim Jones. He was what we would call in the modern day a cult leader. Anybody who wears fashion like that, I would not trust them. If you look like freaking, I'm not even gonna say it. If you look like that, I'm not taking any advice from you, nor am I drinking your Kool-Aid.
No.
But in all seriousness, it's really sad because he did truly brainwash these people. These people came here for like hope and salvation, and thought that he was going to lead them the right way. So basically what happened was these people were following Jim Jones. Like I said, they trusted him. He had power, influence, connections to mainstream leaders who publicly supported him for years. So the people in Jim Jones' compound, they isolated themselves in Guyana because they wanted in the 1970s what many people in the 21st century take for granted that a country should have. And it's an integrated society that rejects, judgment, racism, and promotes tolerance, peace, and effectively distributes resources.
I feel like all these cults start off like, oh, here's all the good stuff we're gonna do, and here's, sounds good.
It's terrible. So 30 years before he stood in front of a vat of poison punch and urged his followers to pretty much end it all, Jim Jones was like super well liked. He was a very respected figure in the progressive community. And in the late 1940s and early 1950s, he was known for his charity work and for founding one of the first mixed race churches in the Midwest. So if you know, in this time period, this was the civil rights era. So, he's going to be very appealing. He's helping, doing work in the Midwest among civil rights activists. And he just really had gained a devoted following, especially among civil rights activists. From Indianapolis, he moved to California, where he and his church continued to promote a message of compassion. They emphasized helping the poor and raising the downtrodden, those who were even marginalized and excluded from society's prosperity. So this is Jim Jones speaking and kind of being an activist, so-called activist. And I don't even like saying that about him because he's terrible. But it says, behind closed doors, they embrace socialism and hope that in time the country would be ready to accept the much stigmatized theory. And then Jim Jones began to explore faith healing. To draw larger crowds and bring in more money for his cause, he started promising miracles, saying he could literally pull cancer out of people. So interesting. But it wasn't cancer that he magically whisked from people's bodies. It was bits of rotten chicken that he produced with a magician's flair. So he basically was doing magic tricks, and people were like, whoa, like he was pulling rotisserie chicken from people and being like, oh, this is cancer. This is the flesh from your body that had cancer in it. And it's like, that's so evil, dude.
Oh my God.
And I guess like in my thought too, I'm like, I didn't know that about him. I didn't know that he did that. But it's like, then how do you explain it when when they think they've been cured of cancer, don't get any treatment, and they die? So how are you
horrible.
you know what I'm saying? That's terrible. It was a deception for a good cause. He and his team rationalized. That was how they basically lived with themselves. They just said, oh, it's deception, but it's for a good cause. It was the first step down a long, dark road that ended with death and 900 people who would never see the sunrise on November 20th, 1978. So the People's Temple becomes a cult. Here is our fearless leader yet again at an anti-eviction rally Sunday, January 16th, 1977 in San Francisco. So it wasn't long before things began to get stranger. Jones was becoming increasingly paranoid about the world around him. His speeches began to reference a coming doomsday. Why? Why is it always a doomsday?
It always is. It's
like helter skelter, you name it. So it said the result of a nuclear apocalypse brought about by government mismanagement. Though he continued to enjoy popular support and strong relationships with the day's leading politicians, including First Lady Rosalind Carter and California Governor Jerry Brown, the media was beginning to turn on him. Several high-profile members of the People's Temple defected, and the conflict was both vicious and public as the traitors lambasted the church, and the church smeared them in return. The church's organizational structure ossified a group of primary well-off white women and oversaw the running of the temple while the majority of congregants were Black. The meetings of the upper echelons grew more secretive as they planned increasingly complicated fundraising schemes, a combination of staged healings, trinket marketing, and solititious mailings. So basically, it was becoming very clear to everybody that he wasn't particularly invested in the religious aspects of his church. Christianity was the bait, not the goal. He was interested in the social progress he could achieve with a fanatically devoted following at his back. So, you know, the money, the fame, the glamour, especially the money. So his social goals became more openly radical, and he began to attract the interest of Marxist leaders as well as violent leftist groups. The shift in a slew of defecations in which Jones sent search parties and a private plane to reclaim the deserters, brought the media down on what was now being widely regarded as a cult. As stories of scandal and abuse proliferated in the papers, Jones made a run for it, taking his church with him. So now we're going to kind of set the stage for the Jonestown Massacre. They settled in Guyana, a country that appealed to Jones because of its non-extradition status and its socialist government. Guyana's authorities verily allowed the cult to begin construction on their utopic compound, and in 1977, the People's Temple arrived to take up residence. It didn't go as planned. It's, you know, now isolated. Jones was free to implement his vision of a pure Marxist society, and it was a lot grimmer than many had anticipated. The daylight hours were consumed by 10-hour workdays, and the evenings were filled with lectures as Jones spoke at length on his fears for society and execrated defectors. On movie nights, entertaining films were replaced with Soviet-style documentaries about the dangers, excesses, and vices of the outside world. Rations were limited as the compound had been built on poor soil, and everything had to be imported via negotiations on shortwave radios, the only way the People's Temple could communicate with the outside world. So this is a portrait of Jim Jones and his wife, Marceline Jones, in front of their adopted children and next to his sister-in-law and her 3 children. And then there were punishments. So this is when the punishments and stuff, this is when stuff started to really kind of get out of hand. So basically, rumors had started escaping Guyana that cult members were harshly disciplined, beaten, and locked in coffin-sized prisons or left to spend the night in dry wells.
Oh my God.
Terrible.
Nope.
It says Jones himself was said to be losing his grip on reality. His health was deteriorating, and by way of treatment, he began taking a nearly lethal combination of amphetamines and pentobarbital. His speeches piped over the compound speakers at nearly all hours of the day and were becoming dark and incoherent. And as he reported that America had fallen into chaos, we had these people believing that like America was like, it was like doomsday. One survivor recalled he would tell us that in the United States, African Americans were being herded into concentration camps and that there was genocide on the streets. They were coming to kill and torture us because we'd chosen what he called the socialist tract. He said they were on their way. So terrible. And he began to raise the idea of revolutionary suicide, a last resort that he and his congregation would pursue if the enemy showed up at their gates. And so the enemy in this case were the very people that actually were coming there to save them and rescue them from this like brainwashing and abuse. So when they're very, how do I say this? When they're very out, when they're out came along, their answer to like leave and get healthy and get to a safe place came. They thought that they were going to be that these people were the ones coming to put them into a concentration camp. And yeah, so he made his followers rehearse their own deaths, calling them together in central courtyard and asking them to drink from a large vat he had prepared for just such an occasion. So like they were literally drinking Kool-Aid and practicing dying. Like if you think about that, it's freaking terrible.
Yeah.
It's not clear whether his congregation knew those moments were drills. Survivors would later report having believed they would die. When they didn't, they were told that it had just been a test, that they had drunk anyway and basically proved their worth, like prove that they were trustworthy, that they would follow through. Yeah. Just let that sink in. Like these poor people. So like I said before, what happened next was basically Representative Leo Ryan's fault because Jonestown was a settlement on the brink of disaster, and in his paranoid state, Jones was likely to have found a catalyst And when Leo Ryan showed up at Jonestown, it threw everything into chaos. Ryan had been friends with a People's Temple member whose mutilated body had been found 2 years prior. And since then, he and several other U.S. representatives had taken an interest in the cult. When reports coming out of Jonestown suggested that it was far from the racism and poverty-free utopia that Jones had sold his members on, Ryan decided to check on the conditions for himself. 5 days before the Jonestown massacre, Ryan flew to Guyana along with the delegation of 18 people, including several members of the press, and met with Jones and his followers. The settlement wasn't the disaster Ryan expected, and while the conditions were lean, Ryan felt the vast majority of cultists seemed to genuinely want to be there. Even when several members asked to leave with his delegation, Ryan reasoned that a dozen defectors out of 600 or so adults wasn't cause for concern. What?
Oh my God.
Like, I'm sorry, one red flag for me is enough. So Jim Jones, however, was devastated because obviously people were on to him. And despite Ryan's assurances that his report would be favorable, Jones was convinced that the People's Temple had failed the inspection and Ryan was going to call in the authorities. So, paranoid and in failing health, Jones sent his security team after Ryan and his crew, who had just arrived at the nearby Port Kaituma airstrip. The People's Temple force shot and killed 4 delegation members and 1 defector, wounding several others. So he was like, you're not leaving. And Leo Ryan died after being shot more than 20 times. So he was like, yeah. Let's get to the day, my friends. So this is the day of the massacre. This was the vat of Kool-Aid that you see here. With the congressman dead, Jim Jones and the People's Temple were finished, but it wasn't arrest that Jones anticipated. He told his congregation that the authorities would be parachuting in at any moment, and then sketched a vague picture of a terrible fate at the hands of a deranged, corrupt government. He encouraged his congregation to die now rather than face their torture. And this is a direct quote. Die with a degree of dignity. Lay down your life with dignity. Don't lay down with tears and agony, I tell you. I don't care how many screams you hear. I don't care how many anguish cries. Death is 1,000,000 times preferable to 10 more days of this life. If you knew what was ahead of you, you'd be glad to be stepping over tonight. Yeah. So the audio of Jones's speech and the ensuing suicide survives. And on the tape, an exhausted Jones says he sees no way forward. He's tired of living and wants to choose his own death. One woman courageously disagrees. She says she's not afraid to die, but she thinks the children at least deserve to live. The People's Temple shouldn't give up and let their enemies win. Now, I'm not going to show this picture because it was absolutely heartbreaking. But in the aftermath of people drinking this Kool-Aid, and when I show you the aerial view, it was mass people, and there are families that literally like drank the Kool-Aid and like huddled together and like died like that. And there's a picture of a small toddler tucked in between their parent, and it's devastating. So Jim Jones tells her the children deserve peace, and the crowd shuts the woman down and telling her that she's just afraid to die. So the group who killed the congressman return. They announce their victory, and the debate ends as Jones begs somebody to hurry the medication. So he's like, let's just do this. Those administering the drugs, perhaps the detritus on the compound suggests, with syringes squirted into the mouth, can be heard on tape assuring the children that the people who have ingested the drug aren't crying from pain. It's only the drugs are a little bitter tasting. So they just told the kids, oh, it just tastes bad. So this is just one portion of the backyard.
I didn't realize it was so many people.
It's bad. Yeah, so they basically say, hey, we're going to drink this Kool-Aid because we feel an obligation to Jones that we wouldn't have made it this far without him. And it's our duty to die in his honor, essentially. So those who have not yet ingested the poison wonder why the dying look like they're in pain when they should be happy. One man is grateful that his child won't be killed by the enemy or raised by the enemy to be a dummy. Jones just keeps begging them to hurry up. He tells the adults to stop being hysterical and exciting the screaming children, and then the audio ends. So this is the aftermath. It's bad. Yeah, it's really bad. Until you see the aerial pictures of there's just bodies everywhere. Um, it's really, really bad. And I think what's so crazy, it's not like an explosion. It's not like, a building falling or a plane crash, where a lot of the times I mean, I've never seen those things up close where like remains can be somewhat like more hidden or maybe have been pretty much like disintegrated. Or, I mean, these are people that just literally ingested poison and their bodies are just where they are. And there's hundreds, 900 of them. Men, women, children. So yeah, so they basically start to hallucinate. Things are just going really bad. And when they found Jim Jones's body, it was clear that he hadn't taken the poison. And after watching his followers' agony, like the true coward that he is, instead of like putting himself in pain, he was like, "Oh, I don't want to do that." So he shot himself instead. So he put 900 people through pain and sickness. And yeah, um, the dead was just basically, it was just a grim collection. Like they had to go out and collect all these bodies. Around 300 of them were children who had been fed the cyanide lace flavor aid by their parents and loved ones. And another 300 were elderly men and women who depended on younger cultists for support. As for the rest of the people killed in the Jonestown Massacre, they were a mix of true believers and the hopeless, as John R. Hall writes in Gone from the Promised Land. So, this is again another terrible picture. I mean, it's gruesome. But that is the not so short, long story of the Jonestown Massacre that the Sacrament is based on. Now, what I did find interesting, and it honestly was kind of heartbreaking, was there is a woman by the name of Hyacinth Thrash. She was at first the only survivor of this entire thing. So imagine being one survivor out of 900 people and coming out to that. So like there's some weight in that. She was 52 years old and a lifelong Baptist in 1957 when she met Jim Jones. They both lived in Indianapolis, and he had a church called the People's Temple, which we already talked about. And so she joined the People's Temple, and she watched this miracle healing, and just she basically said like that he healed this Louisville woman of total deafness. And so she said, he did great things for the People's Temple. He was a great guy, he was a humanitarian and he did all these great things. And she really believed in like what he had to offer. And at the time, she was born in 1905 in Alabama, which is as a Black female, I mean, that's not a good place to be in 1905. So in the 13 years that she lived in Alabama, there were 71 lynchings in that state alone. So you can kind of see why Jim Jones, who's promising this civil rights activist, and he's this guy who's gonna create this like judgment-free zone and safe zone for all of these, I guess I don't even know if you call them refugees or, people who were just looking for a safe space. And promoting integration at that time was obviously like a really big deal. So she said he put coal in Black folks bin and gave them shoes and things. And he was always willing to help somebody. Of course, that, I like that work, helping somebody. And I was willing to go along with him because at the time he was really doing good. So she sold her house for $35,000. And she gave all of that to Jones. So if she was doing that, can you imagine how much money he probably had and being in politics? So she recounted that on November 18th, 1978, when this whole thing took place, everybody drank the poison except for Hyacinth. She did not. She hid under her bed and waited. And eventually she said she thinks that she had fallen asleep or whatever. She said she did remember babies marching past their place with like little paper hats on, and they were wearing sandals and sunsuits and matching shorts and tops. And she said, it's enough to make you scream your lungs out thinking of those babies. And she had to witness that. So she said she fell asleep or passed out, and she said she woke up the next morning to just absolute carnage. So the saddest thing was that when she came to Jonestown, this people's temple, when she came to live there, she went with her sister. Her sister did unfortunately drink the poison. So when she woke up, she found her sister dead. She found all these people that she had grown to love and know, and she was the only survivor. And then they did say that they found another. They think that it hasn't been like confirmed, and he has since passed, but they think that there was another man by the name of Cleveland Davis who said that he survived. So yeah, I mean, really 2 survivors out of 900, and waking up to like that absolute carnage is terrible. So her statement was that the 10th anniversary of his Holocaust, she basically told a reporter, I don't feel nothing towards him now, no bitterness towards him. I was at times, but I prayed to the Lord because you can't hate nobody. So I was healed of that.
That's absolutely wild. Absolutely wild.
That's it. Yeah. So I think these were all pretty crazy cases. And this is almost a 2-hour episode.
My honorable mention was the Zac Efron Ted Bundy movie.
Oh my gosh.
Because
that was the worst casting choice they could have ever made.
I love Zac Efron. So I was like,
he's the only Disney star that's actually aged well with us. And has
I
appealed
saw that
it to us.
On the list. I saw that one on the list, and I was like, I gotta watch that again.
Appealed to us at every stage of our aging. I look back at High School Musical and I'm like, oh, yikes. I'm like, that was like the type then.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
It was all the rage. But yeah, so yeah, so if that doesn't, if you're still with us 2 hours later, I hope I spooked your day out. I hope that like gave you the heebie. Those were some dark cases. I realized that I'm listening.
Deep.
They scared. I was like, I'm gonna pick the 3 that like gave me nightmares.
Yes. As soon as I saw Strangers, I was like, that's it. I was like, that movie wrecked me. I was like, that real life stuff.
It's dark. It's really dark. Like to think that these people existed, and again, going back to these cults, Manson family, Jonestown murders, like being able to target a vulnerable population and bring them to either commit murder or commit suicide.
Yeah.
Like, I know Jim Jones is like, he's probably at like layer 1 of hell because it's the hottest, because heat rises. So he's probably just like rolling around like a rotisserie chicken. He sucks. I'm like, I'll make jokes about him all day because I think he's the worst.
Looks like a bad Elvis impersonator.
Literally.
Like, who do you think he was?
he like thought he was like banging. Like you could tell. He had the sideburns. Yeah. He was wearing those giant glasses.
Those glasses.
He was like, I'm Jim Jones. And it's like, I don't know. Sometimes I look back at like older pictures and I'm like, that's a women like found attractive.
Nah.
Like, oh, well, I'm like, you wouldn't survive in 2023, my friend. These women out here, they're baddies. They would eat you alive. They would post you up in the uterus club.
Oh my gosh, me and my sister were just talking about those like, are we dating the same guy? I was like, nobody is safe. Nobody is safe.
Nobody is safe.
These men are not safe.
And all I'm gonna say, if you're listening to this, guys, Delaware not safe. Is a small state, my friend. It is a small state, and we probably know what your dingling looks like. We probably know what your dingling looks like. Because when you piss these women off, there is no there's no couth left.
No.
They're gonna post all your screenshots, they're gonna let everybody know about your micropene. So
And this is where
it's terrible.
Does its
This is where
180.
we lose control. We go from Jonestown murders to the Uterus Club.
yeah.
But I hope I didn't break a rule. We can't talk about what's in the Uterus Club, right? We just can't.
I didn't know there
Or
were like
can we just not
official
mention it at
rules.
all? Oh.
I don't know the
Like Fight
rules.
Club, we don't talk about Fight Club. But yeah, so I hope, like I said, I hope we spooked you out today. I hope that this, you're gonna watch some of these movies. To recount, Rachel, give them your movies.
My movies were The Strangers, The Clove Hitch Killer, and Scream.
Yep. And then mine were The Town That Dreaded Sundown, Borderland, and The Sacrament. So those will be our top 6 picks for Halloween movies if you want to give yourself the heebie-jeebs. And then we did throw in, you should definitely see The Haunting of Sharon Tate and Charlie Says. So, yeah.
There it is. Don't drink the Kool-Aid.
Don't drink the Kool-Aid. And you know what cracks me up? Me and Taylor always say that mercury's in Gatorade, and we always say it's in purple Gatorade because purple Gatorade tastes the worst. And I'm like, it's the same for purple Kool-Aid. And what they drank was grape Kool-Aid. So
Flavor
do not
Aid.
drink.
It wasn't even Kool-Aid. It was
What's
the
even the good
off-brand.
Kool-Aid?
It's like the Dollar General.
That like doesn't dissolve, so you're just drinking chunks of like Kool-Aid sugar. It's like the Aldi version. They call it like Kool-Aid. It's not, or they're like Pringles or shingles.
Yep.
Wow. All right. Well, before we get too delusional, since we've been on here for about 2 hours, good episode, Rachel. Good episode. Sorry, I went a
Love
little
it.
dark on
Love
you
it.
there. But we will be back next Tuesday to skeeve you out, and I'm sure we'll have something enticing. I think Rachel's been dying to share a really spooky ghost story with us.
I got ghost stories. Yep.
Yeah.
And if
And
you're
she
in Delaware,
lives
ghost
in
stories.
a haunted house.
Ish.
Scratchy eye peoples.
Yeah.
Sorry, I live in a haunted house apparently too, so
It's 'tis the season.
yeah. Well. All right, guys. I guess this is where we bid fair morrow.
And this is it. We'll see you next time.
Until next time.
Let's
Get
weird.
weird. It'll never be synchronized. That's all right.
No, it's fine.
All right. See you later, peeps.
Adios.